Hey everybody, GhostJunk here with a new video on a cool build that you can do as a level 60 paladin. To get into the build here, this is a reflect set of gear and it's designed for things like farming large packs of mobs or PvP to watch an enemy try to slay you quickly, only for them to realize they are damaging themselves and they don't know why. I'll go over each item individually and where you can get them, as well as helpful enchantments that are used for this build. The first item is a belt called Girdle of Reprisal. It comes as a quest reward from the small quest chain in Searing Gorge. Locate the wooden outhouse on the southeastern section of the zone, and at the end of the chain you can choose between the belt and a wand. Belt of Reprisal has a 1% chance every time you hit to deal 75 to 126 shadow damage. This isn't reliable damage, however if you are getting hit many times there's a good chance it will proc and deal some damage back. The next item is plate gloves called Razor Gauntlets. They drop off the last boss in Dire Maul East, Alzin the Wild Shaper. This does 3 arcane damage each time you are struck in combat. Next are some leather shoulders called Nexus Shoulder Pads. This drops from Black Morass off the boss Epitome. It gives you a 1% chance to inflict 30 to 51 shadow damage each time you are hit. It's similar to Belt of Reprisal on how it functions. While you're still inside, there is a ring called Blackthorn Band. This drops off Moss Deep, and this does 3 arcane damage each time you are struck in combat. Another similar ring called Nagel Ring that drops from Golem Lord Agromech inside Blackrock Depths. This also does 3 arcane damage each time you are struck in combat. If you happen to have a lot of gold, or if you're interested in a different option for ring slots, you can use Freezing Band, which has a 1% chance to deal 50 frost damage and freeze an enemy for 5 seconds. This is also interesting because it is not unique, so you could use 2 of these if you wanted to, but this is not reliable damage. Next is a plate chest piece called Demon Forged Breastplate. This has a 3% chance each time you are struck to steal 120 health over 4 seconds. The way this works is it puts a lifesteal debuff on your enemies that strike you. This is a blacksmith item and it requires the smith to have 10 demonic runes to build, which can be challenging as that is bind on pickup material. If you're having trouble with getting that breastplate, you can try a different blacksmith piece called True Silver Breastplate. This gives you a 3% chance to heal you for 60 to 101. Not quite the same, but it is a bit more cost friendly. Continuing on with a few more items that may cost you some gold to acquire, we have a cloak called Cloak of Flames. This is a world drop that usually costs around 500 gold on the auction house if you are not lucky enough to get one yourself. This does 5 damage to each enemy that is attacking you. A very iconic item, the Skullflame Shield, arguably the best world drop in the entire game, is an excellent shield of choice for this build. It has a 3% chance to steal 35 health, as well as a 1% chance to deal 75 to 126 fire damage to all targets around you. If you're a max level engineer, a better option for you would be to craft a force reactive disc, but it does require several Arcanite bars as well as other expensive materials in order to make. The tooltip doesn't tell you how much damage, however it does electrical charges that do massive amounts of damage to your enemies, as well as has a chance of damaging the shield, so use caution if you choose this item. A third potential option is the shield's Stygian Buckler that drops in Naxxramas off trash mobs. It has a 15% chance to reduce an attacker's movement by 50% for 5 seconds, which can help buy you some time if you are kiting mobs around. The summonable world boss Cla'kora has a chance to drop ice-plated leggings, which has a 10% chance of dealing 35 to 45 frost damage and reduces enemy movement by 5% for 12 seconds, which can stack up to 5 times. This can also help you buy time in large pulls or really aggravate opponents in PvP. For trinket slots, there is Lasher's Whip, which drops off of trash mobs in Emerald Sanctum. This does 4 arcane damage each time you are struck in combat. It also has a nice bit of stamina, which isn't found on many trinkets. The other trinket is Essence of the Pure Flame, and this drops off of Ragnaros. Each time you are struck in combat, this does a whopping 13 fire damage, which is more than 3 times the amount of other more reliable damaging items. If you were lucky enough to see these items drop, Talisman of Binding Shard, which is a legendary neck that drops off the Rock Elemental boss Gar, and this does 4 nature damage each time you are struck, but this item only has a 4% chance to drop. Lastly, if you choose not to use a shield and would prefer a 2-handed weapon, you can use Sulphurous Hand of Ragnaros, as it does 5 fire damage to enemies when struck in combat. But in order to get this weapon, you'll of course need the Eye of Sulphurous, which has a 6% chance to drop off of Ragnaros. Some honorable mentions are Pauldrons of Deflection, which gives you a 2% chance to do some kind of counterattack, Thick Obsidian Breastplate, which will grant a spell shield that absorbs 300 to 501 damage of that school of magic, Hyperchromatic Deflector, which has a 3% chance to reflect harmful spells, and Drill Bore Disc, which does 3 arcane damage each time you are struck. These are all great options for this build and could be used in different scenarios depending on what you're doing. For enchants, I would go with Vampirism on rings and neck. This will help offset some of the damage you take by giving you some additional lifesteal. It's also a particularly cheap enchantment, so it won't cost you much to do. For shields, use a Thorium Shield Spike for some additional damage, and then wherever possible, use Stamina enchants as your health pool will be lower than usual as a fully geared level 60. Your one-handed weapons could be anything for this build, but really good supporting weapons are Thunder Fury, which we all know is a massive pain to get, Dream's Herald, which is a blacksmith item that is expensive but still great, Misplaced Servo Arm, which is a Naxxramas trash drop, or Hammer of the Northern Wind, which has a chance to send out a frost bolt that slows movement speed. Another great companion item here is Libram of the Faithful. This will reduce your damage taken by 5%, as long as you're standing inside Consecration. Some additional buffs to increase your reflect damage are Retribution Aura from a Paladin, Thorns from a Druid, and a Gift of Arthas potion to increase the damage your enemies will take. Here is some footage of me inside Shadowfang Keep with all the different pieces of gear that I'm using. Once I enter, I start pulling a lot of mobs for really large pulls. I'm also changing auras for different areas depending on how fast I want the mobs to go down. You can see that I also have to plan out how I'm going to pull all the mobs together so they can all be slain around the same time. Even 100 or so level 20 mobs can eventually take you down, so it's important to plan it out. After I get them all together, my health usually sits around half. The Reflect set itself, combined with Consecration, slays them all pretty quickly. Here I am inside Dire Maul East doing the Lasher farm. I'm using the same gear as I did inside Shadowfang Keep with the first pack using Consecration. I've also sped both these clips up by the same percentage so you can see the passage of health a little easier on the Lashers. It's easy to tell that the damage going out across all spells and reflected gear is really high, really fast. The Lashers are slain without putting too much of a fight, and I barely lose any health because they go down quickly. The second pull is without using Consecration, and just using a few regular spells with auto attack. This skirmish with the Lashers is much slower without Consecration. In fact, this pull ends up taking almost double length of time the previous one did, and the damage going is still quite decent. I do also put out a cautionary heal on myself, just in case, but all the Reflect gear easily managed to get the majority of Lashers down a pretty low amount of health before I had to start switching targets. Lastly, here's me in a duel with a friend of mine. I have no buffs other than Concentration Aura, and you can see how fast he loses health just by hitting me, and me only healing when I need to. You can see how this can really mess with a rogue, dual-wield warrior, or feral druid. Basically anyone who attacks quickly will take a lot of damage very fast, and won't understand until it's too late where it's coming from. I really enjoy using this build to farm things in different dungeons that are lower level. It's also fun dueling a rogue or warrior thinking that I'm not taking things seriously, and then seeing the surprise when they back off. Hope you all found this video to be really fun and informative. Let me know in the comments if I missed any Reflect pieces of gear. And also let me know if you would try this out in a dungeon or PvP. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.